The Ranchers is an open-world country life sim that mixes farming and ranching with a full GTA-style city, complete with cars, cops and crime. You can get tangled up in if you want to. That developer has said outright that the goal was combining what he loved from the games like Harvest Moon, The Sims and GTA into one game. And that's exactly what this is. Not a farming game with a gimmick bolted on. That developers were kind enough to send me a full review key for this game, but really these are more like my first impressions. After the first couple hours of playing, you begin this game by taking over a rundown ranch and slowly turning it into a working farm and home. The basic loop is pretty familiar if you've played a farming game before. You clear your land, plant crops, raise animals like chickens, rabbits, goats and cows, gather wood and stone, and build up your ranch using a hammer and blueprint system. The crops stay planted until they actually die now, and mature produce won't just vanish if you forget to harvest it for a day. Some plants can even go back into a growing state after harvest, instead of needing to be replanted from scratch. So thankfully the basic farming loop feels fairly sophisticated at this point. Actually selling what you grow works a few different ways. You can drop raw materials into a cash inbox for a quick but low payout, but you can also sell produce through local markets for better prices, or take on the daily orders around town. There's also a utilities side to running a ranch. You sign contracts for electricity and water at the city hall, and you can eventually build wells, wind turbines, and solar panels if your setup produces more power than you use. The city can also buy the surplus. All of this gives the ranch some real long-term structure, instead of just being decorative. Now building your house and ranch works through the same blueprint and hammer system. Foundations, walls, roofs, doors, windows, all placed piece by piece. This part had a pretty rough reputation early on. People, myself included, found the snapping pretty awkward, and the camera was also annoying while building. It is still not perfect by any means, but the developers at least responded with simpler one-button placement and extra building settings. So yes, it does feel better than it used to, though it's still worth expecting some clunkiness here. Now here's where the game really separates itself from other farming sims. You see, the world around your ranch isn't a small village. It's a full city with different districts, shops that follow opening hours, a farmer's market, a museum, a casino, plus the countryside connecting it all. So getting around means walking, biking, driving a truck or car, or taking the subway, with about 15 subway stations spread. Vehicles take damage, need fuel, and can be repaired at garages. And parking somewhere you're not supposed to can get your car impounded, meaning you will need to recover it through an in-game phone app. Now, unfortunately, the game's atmosphere and ambience isn't great. Even basic stuff like the rain doesn't have any meaningful sound effects. And the overall presentation feels quite flat and also incoherent. Why does a random cop in his office immediately know my name? It just doesn't come across as a believable world. Driving was one of the roughest parts of the earlier demo, and it still isn't great unfortunately, though it did improve, but it's still quite slippery and rather hard to control, and the early sections that forced you to drive dragged a bit on. The developers are actively updating this aspect though. And then there's the crime and police system, which is really the heart of that GTA comparison. It seems you're never really forced to interact with it, but stealing, damaging property, or simply driving recklessly builds up a wanted level that leads to fines, police chases, arrests and jail time. Getting away successfully can wipe the fine, while letting you keep whatever you took. There's already a fine system in place for this, and an upcoming police department update is meant to rebalance that system and give it more for players to actually interact with. It is my understanding that if you get thrown in jail during multiplayer, then your friends can keep the ranch running while you're locked up. The quests and NPCs carry a lot of the early game, mostly through phone calls and conversations with neighbors. The quest system supports things like failure conditions, following NPCs around, replaying quests you failed, and missions built to work in multiplayer, even though I haven't experienced it myself. Multiplayer seems one of the bigger features being pushed for this release, up to 4 players online, where friends can help you farm, build, and explore together. On the technical side, the game ran pretty smooth, with occasional hiccups, which which is expected for early access. A few features like an auction market and starting a family, festivals, hunting are not clearly confirmed for this early access release, so don't assume everything ever mentioned for the game will be here right away. It is launching into early access on July 30. This launch build closely mirrors the earlier demo, but adds a lot the demo didn't have. More ranching content, more quests, more world content, and multiplayer. This is really a game for people who want something different from the usual cozy farming formula, who like the idea of switching between planting crops and getting into a police chase, and who don't mind some rough edges while a game is still being built. So if precise controls, smooth driving, and a fully polished experience matter a lot to you, then it's probably smarter to wait and see how the early access period goes.